Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a video talking to you about this little SBR here. This is the CMMG Banshee in 300 Blackout. Been testing this thing out all day long. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of video than I do normally. Typically when I do a review, I like to get as many rounds as I can through a gun before bringing it in front of the camera here. This one is sent to me by Silencer Shop to do as a T&E, so I'm going to be sending it back to them in a couple days. So I didn't have as much time with it as I would like, so I'm only going to be able to give you my opinion on it based off about 600 rounds or so, which is still a good fair number. And I definitely have some interesting talking points to bring to you guys, and had both myself and a couple other people shoot this thing, both close up and even out to almost 300 yards. And well, you guys will be seeing how that performed probably by the end of the video. So really, with all that said, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just start rolling in some footage of me shooting this thing, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the specs of this rifle here. So one of the first things you're probably going to notice with this little SBR here is the color on it. I believe they call this their slate color. No, they're going to have 11 different Cerakote options for you available from CMMG. It comes standard. I believe they call this their premier Cerakote. So you have 5 different things Cerakoted, all to match. You have the little stock here, which I'll be talking about shortly, your receivers, your handguard, and then to complement the slate color, they did I believe that they called it graphite on the dust cover, just to kind of give it a nice little two-tone look with a grip and safety, mag release, all that gives it the nice two-tone look. Again, the colors are pretty much going to come standard with it and are going to be very similar to a lot of the other CMMG products out there already. So if you have a color you like, whether it be the FDE or whatever, you can get it in these little Banshees here. So let's go ahead and start from the back end here and work our way up to the muzzle. Back here we have their new rip stock, which, you know, when I first saw it, I didn't really think much of it. I didn't really, you know, I was like, well, it kind of looks weird. I don't get what's the point of it. However, one of the cool things with this stock is it basically acts as like a PDW stock that makes it really quick into action, because what you can do is basically you have a little set screw you can set to a predetermined length, and all I got to do is pull back on the stock and it'll stop at that predetermined spot. So if, like me, you like running a magnified optic even on a short barrel like this, which you'll see why in a moment, or again towards the end of the video, you have to have that set eye relief. And obviously you don't want to be fumbling around with the stock when you need it to work. So what you can do is set that set screw at the length of pull that you need it to get that proper eye relief. And as soon as you need it, you just pull the stock out and put it into your shoulder and you're ready to go. Now, because they intend for this stock to be moving around forward to back, they didn't want to attach any sling points to it to maybe impede that moving around. So what they did is they added some Ambi sling loops back here in your end plate. It only has the little loops, so if you have like the HK hooks or even those like little hook style Magpul slings, then great. I wish they'd also put the little QD spot back here, because almost all my slings run on those QD mounts, so having that little QD mount back here would have been nice. But you know, these are definitely workable, especially if you're running like a single point or something like that, which again is going to be pretty popular with a little short compact package like this one. Moving forward, we have one of the CMMG's Ambi charging handles here. It's a really big flared out charging handle, so it's going to be really easy to grab onto, whether you're flat palming it to run it, whether you're grabbing it. If you want, you can come over the top, and again, because it's Ambi, you can come on the left side, or excuse me, the right side, and be able to actuate that charging handle no problem. Regular forward assist. Down here we have an Ambi Safety, so it's going to be very similar to your mil-spec style safeties on the left side. However, it is also going to be on this right side. Again, I kind of wish they'd gone with a smaller size for your offside. A lot of those Ambi safeties on the market are going to have that smaller side for your offside, so it's not digging into your finger. I personally don't have a big issue with it. It was perfectly fine for me. However, my friend that I was out here shooting with did bring that up, so I figured it was going to be worth mentioning to you guys. The trigger here is actually a single stage trigger. Now, because of the intended purpose of a little rifle like this one, they didn't want to go with a super light single stage trigger. They wanted it to be something that you could safely use in like a law enforcement or military kind of environment. So with those single stage triggers, usually you're looking at a really light trigger pull, like 3.5 pounds or lighter. And that's not necessarily a good thing, and again, in a law enforcement or military environment. So what they did is they made it about a 5.5 to 6 pound trigger pull. So again, for people who are used to two-stage triggers, you're used to being able to stage that trigger and then break it. This, because there's no take-up, they wanted, again, add that weight so that when you're pulling that trigger, you're doing so intentionally. Now that said, it's a very short travel because it's single stage, but again, it's going to feel probably a little different to single stages that you might be used to, again, because it's got that added weight. But again, as you'll see shortly, that does not negatively affect your ability to shoot accurately, even out to almost 300 yards. They have a Magpul grip down here, as well as the Magpul trigger guard. All good things in my opinion. It has a little storage compartment in the Magpul grip, but again, if you're familiar with the Magpul grips, you know the deal here. As far as the bolt carrier group, as far as I can tell, it's just a regular mil-spec bolt. I did take it apart to clean it out before coming out here to do the shooting today. Everything seems on the up and up. I didn't see any issues with it. But again, nothing fancy, just a regular mil-spec bolt carrier group. Moving forward, we have, I believe this is a 7-inch. I think. I hope I remember that correctly. All right, I didn't write it down. I believe it's a 7-inch handguard. It is M-LOK compatible on these three sides here. So on your 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock positions, you can attach M-LOK parts, just like this little Magpul vertical grip you see here. Again, works well enough. If you're someone who is stuck on Keymod, Keymod will be an option. There will be an upcharge for it. I think it's only like 25 bucks if you wanted to put a Keymod handguard on there. But honestly, M-LOK is the way of the future. I have Keymod too. I get it. But M-LOK is definitely where the industry is going. So you got to switch over at some point. You do have an adjustable gas block in here, and it is worth mentioning this is a direct gas impingement gun. So you do have the adjustable gas block. Honestly, I haven't messed around with it too much. I have, opened it and closed it a little bit. It's like a 17 position switch. If I get that wrong, I'll definitely make a note of it. So you have a lot of range of adjustment from all the way open to all the way closed, which is great for 300 blackout when you're shooting 110 grain supers going to 2,300 feet per second, all the way down to 220 grain subs going 900 feet per second. Having that range is really nice, but again, I'm not a big fan of playing around with gas systems too much. I just kind of found a setting that worked, and I just kind of left it there because, again, I didn't want to mess with it. That's not something I find enjoyable. But if you're someone who likes doing hand loads and fine-tuning a load to a gun, you already got that adjustable gas block, so you're going to be way good there. As far as the barrel, it's an 8-inch barrel. I don't have a whole lot of specifics on the barrel. If I did contact CMMG to hopefully get some more of the specs, so if I have those, I'll set them over here on the right side of the screen as far as like what the barrel construction is. But it is a 1-in-7 twist, which may or may not be a good thing based on what type of bullets you're running. I'll talk about that a little more when I talk about the accuracy of this thing. But again, with the right load, it's definitely capable at some longer ranges. Again, I keep teasing it, as you'll see later. The muzzle device up here is like a kind of a beefed up A2 almost. Definitely, a flash hider style. However, it's got these little 2 prongs on the side, which you may or may not be able to see. Let's see if it'll focus. Those little 2 prongs. What that does is it allows you to use the CMMG Silencers. This is their DEFCAN 3 titanium one. And what you can do, let me just make sure I do this safely. You can actually use it as a bi-lug adapter. So those of you familiar with tri-lug adapters, same thing, but just 2 instead of 3. So it'll only go on one way. So if it doesn't go on the first one, just rotate it 180 degrees. You just press in, twist, and now you're ready to go. For those of you screaming, ooh, I don't like Trilux or Bilux because it might run into baffle strikes, I intentionally paid a lot of attention to what the crown of this thing looked like, or the muzzle end of this thing looked like before shooting today. And again, through the vast majority of the shooting, probably easily 500 rounds with this can on, I've seen zero issues with any sort of baffle strikes or anything like that. So yeah, there might be a little bit of play, but I had zero issues with it. And honestly, being able to take your can on and off this easily is a really, really nice thing, especially if you have multiple guns for one can. You just get the bi-lug adapter muzzle devices, throw the can on, give it a half twist, and now you're ready to rock and roll. Now this may look really, really long, and it is, but because it's titanium, it's surprisingly lightweight. So even though it adds a lot of length to the end of your gun, it really doesn't add a whole lot of weight, which is pretty cool. And I'll be doing a more in-depth video about this silencer later after I finish this video. But that's pretty much this thing in a nutshell. The Optic up here is a primary arms 1:6 ACSS scope for 300 blackout. I'm a really big fan of this scope. For those of you 300 blackout shooters, it makes zeroing your rifle really easy, and then shooting at longer ranges really easy. Whether you're shooting supers or subs, it's got the holdovers for both of those, obviously to shorter ranges with the subs. But again, this is what we were using when we were shooting at almost 300 yards, and boringly consistent with a reticle like this one. I have a dedicated video on this and the ADM mount that's in, so if you guys are interested in that, you know, you can search those out. So with all that, let's go ahead and show some more of us shooting this bad boy, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about this rifle. I ruined the pretty group. So obviously one of the things people want to know about is the accuracy. And as I said, this is a 1 in 7 twist, which, you know, I know 300 blackout purists are going to have their preferred twist rates, but that twist rate is going to go a long way in stabilizing different weights of bullets, especially in such a short barrel. The nice thing is, because it's a 1 in 7, you do technically have, or at least theoretically have, one full rotation of that rifling before the bullet leaves the barrel, which should do a lot to help stabilize. But I did see some issues with the heavier bullets in regards to stabilization. There was an exception, which I'll talk about, but let's just go ahead and start showing you the groups that I and Christian were able to get with this rifle. So the first type of ammo we shot, which is also my favorite 300 blackout load so far, is the 125 grain SSTs loaded by Fiocchi. If you'll look up here, you can see that we had 4 shots in just under an inch with 1 flyer. This was the first shot, so I'm assuming that with the, you know, with a can, you may be dealing with some different point of impact stuff, but these 4 shots were pretty good. Now I should also mention these are only at 50 yards, so keep that in mind when you see some of these other groups. But not terrible again for 8-inch barrel 300 blackout with those 125s. Looking at an inch for these 4 with 1 flyer. It kind of gets a little convoluted up here, so let's go ahead and let's see. Well, let's just go over here. So the last group I shot for accuracy was these 220 grain Corbon rounds, which have performed really well for me in the past. I did a accuracy video with a bunch of different 300 blackout loads, and it performed really well. You can see 3 shots right here almost touching, but we had 2 a little bit higher up here. That was the best it did with any of the heavier bullets. With, as you'll see with the rest of them, it really struggled with like 150 grain and 208 grain bullets. But I guess let's just dive into it. So up here we have 150 grain full metal jackets from Fiocchi, which again, out of my Faxon barrel, shoots really well. This barrel just doesn't seem to like it very much. Again, at 50 yards, we're looking at probably an 1.5 inch group right here. 3 shots pretty nice and tight here, but then we had the 2 flyers over here. Again, 150 grains right here. This is easily 2 inches, maybe a little bit bigger right here. Again, not super impressive. Again, the 150s right here, this is probably closer to 2 inches. Again, not super excellent. Same thing here. We had 4 kind of almost to 1.5 inches, but then with the 1 flyer it opened it up. Down here was a 208 grain AMAXs from Hornady, and my point of aim was at the bottom of this diamond. Now I zeroed it for the 125s, so you would expect there to be a point of impact shift. It dropped it all the way off paper, so I changed my point of aim up here, aiming at the top of the diamond. You can see a little bit, you know, again, probably 1.5 inches. Again, up here, point of aim was dead center. You're looking at, again, about 1.5 inches. And one of the other last ones I shot was this 5-shot group right here. My point of aim was the top of this diamond. Again, we had 5 shots and definitely under 1 inch. So again, it really, really liked those 125 grain SSTs loaded by Fiocchi. 150s and 208s, you know, not terrible. You're definitely looking at under 3 inches at 100 yards, probably. Maybe a little bit bigger. But again, those 220 grain Corbon bullets, it seemed to like. But it definitely, its favorite one of the ones we shot today was those 125 grain Fiocchi SSTs. And that's what we ended up shooting at 290 yards. So I've been teasing it a lot, so let's go ahead and just cut over there. Me and a couple of my friends, we shot at 290 yards. And again, boringly consistent. Once we figured out what our hold needed to be, we made some slight adjustments because the furthest we shot was only 50 yards. So obviously it wasn't perfect. But once we got it dialed in, I mean, the reticle does all the work for you. And we were just smacking that steel, no problem, at 290 yards. In fact, one of my friends who I've talked about several times, he's the guy who can shoot 290 yards with his Glock 20 and hit consistently. Decided he didn't want to shoot from a rest, he wanted to shoot offhand. And as you'll see, he was able to smack that steel in one shot, just standing. So, you know, he's a much better shooter than I am because I tried it. I couldn't do it, but shooting from a rest, I was nailing that thing consistently. Same with my friend Christian. He was shooting it consistently from the bench. And then after the other guy, you know, demonstrated his competency at shooting long range well, Christian tried it, and he was able to also hit standing offhand, shooting this thing 290 yards. So this thing will definitely reach out and touch somebody if you're using a good ammo for it. And once you get it paired up, it's going to run really well for you. You just do have to do some work on your end to find what it's going to like, because again, and every barrel is different. So mine struggled with those 150 grainers. If you get one, you may get lucky and it'll just shoot those things no problem. So keep that in mind. But again, once you find the right load, you know, 300 blackout, you can still do a lot of work even at those longer ranges.
I feel like you should try it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I should.
You should. I really feel like you should.
So to wrap things up, I'm just going to run over the pros and cons in my mind for this little SBR. And again, keep in mind, I have a very limited amount of time with this thing, but even still today, we did shoot quite a bit through it. And in my opinion, shooting about 500 to 600 rounds through a gun in one day is about the equivalent amount of quote-unquote punishment that you're going to give a rifle shooting 1,000 rounds over the course of a year. You're getting it hot, you're getting it dirty, especially shooting suppressed. So I, again, all that disclaimer aside, I still feel like I have a pretty good idea of my thoughts on this rifle. With that said, let's go ahead and start with some of the negatives that I found with it. Again, as I mentioned, I really wish there was a QD mount back here. Again, definitely not a deal breaker. You can replace the end plates yourself or just get a sling that's going to be compatible with that. So not a huge deal. As I also said, that Ambi Safety, I wish that offhand side was a little bit smaller. Then again, for those, if you want to run an Ambi, people do like having the full size. Again, it wasn't an issue for me, but it was an issue for some of the other people I had shoot it. One of the other issues I ran into was with certain mags. So this is one of the well, I guess the, not really Gen 3, but the 300 Blackout Magpul mags. This ran just fine. The Lancer mags I was running through ran just fine. However, I have one of these, I believe it's a Gen 3. Yeah, this is a Gen 3 20 round mag. what I found is even with the bolt locked open, let me just lock this open real quick. This one had a really hard time seating all the way. So I would insert it, I would think have a really good handle on it, and it did at that time, probably because there's no rounds in it. But there were times when I'd seat it, and then it wouldn't pick up the next round, and I found out, okay, it wasn't seated all the way. Now, that's my bad for not double checking it, but when I would smack it and get it nice and seated, it ran just fine. And that's really the only issue I ran into. It ran my D&H, GI style mags just fine, ran the Lancers just fine, and ran all the other Magpuls just fine. So it might just be this one mag, but again, take that for what you will. Let's see, other downsides. Really the biggest downside, in my opinion, is the price on these. Now, they're not outrageous, but they are about $14.50 MSRP. Now, you might be able to find that for a little bit cheaper in a local shop or some places online, but the MSRP is about $14.50 on these things. That's not cheap. Now, that said, that does put it in the same range as like BCM or Daniel Defense or anything like that, and you do get a lot of good features for that money. Again, you get this really nice Cerakote in pretty much one of your choice of 11 colors, which is really nice. You do get some really nice features like an adjustable gas block, which in my opinion is a really good thing to have in 300 Blackout. You have this really cool idea of a stock like this, which for a PDW, like an 8-inch 300 Blackout, is a really nice thing if you're going to pull it out of a bag and want it to get into action quickly. Again, especially with a magnified optic where you have to have that eye relief, that's a really, really good thing. I do like the fact that it has that adapter to be able to do the bi-lug. You do get the really nice Ambi charging handle back here, but you're also not getting a super smoking awesome trigger in regards to like having a super lightweight competition trigger. But again, that wasn't their intent with it, so I get that. So if you do have money to spend, then this is definitely not a bad option. This is a good out-of-the-box 300 Blackout where there's really no parts you need to change because you already have the adjustable gas block. And again, if you find the right load for it, it'll do everything you need it to easily out to 290 yards, and I'm sure further than that if I had further to shoot. Now, obviously, I got this rifle early, so I don't know exactly what this is going to be released along with this thing. However, I would imagine for those of you who already have like an SBR lower, they will probably have uppers, just solo uppers for sale, which will reduce that price a little bit, but obviously don't quote me on that because again, I don't know what options are going to be released with this thing. So again, overall, if you're not someone who likes to tinker and you want something you can just pull out of a box and have it ready to use, this is a really good option because again, you don't have to replace the gas block, you don't have to replace a bunch of stuff. It's really ready to go and it'll work for you. Again, you might have to tune the gas block a little bit, but honestly, I typically like to leave it more open so that I don't have to mess with it. But again, for those of you who want to tune it, you can do that. So again, really good option right out the box. And this obviously is sold as an SBR, so you will have to do the background check and all that, or excuse me, not just the background check, the NFA paperwork. But again, if you want something just ready to go right out the box, this might be a good place for you to look. One thing that's also worth mentioning with these is it does have a lifetime quality guarantee. You don't have to register it. You don't have to be the original owner. They will cover these things. If you ever have any issues, CMMG will take care of you. And that's a really nice thing too on top of everything else. If you want to see other stuff like this suppressor review, again, definitely stay subscribed to my channel so you will see that as those things come out. If you're also interested, I do have a Patreon page because I don't know how much longer things will be going here on YouTube. So that'll be a good place to stay in touch with what's going on. And also the people there help support videos like this one where I have to go out and buy a bunch of ammo to be able to run through this. So all the ammo you saw was ammo I purchased myself, or some of the subs was given to me by a friend. But, again, patrons are what made stuff like that possible. But with that said, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. Try to get back to you as quick as I can. No promises as far as how fast it'll take me because I got a lot of stuff going on. But anyway, all that said, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.